reality of looking for new and interesting places to walk that don't tend to have that many people is that the paths you walk on look a bit like this. And thankfully I'm dressed for the occasion, so I'm not getting torn to shreds. I've had a few spiders to the face. And it makes it slightly more challenging to record. Walking off these familiar paths onto the paths less travelled, as the saying goes, something like that, has a way of bringing you back into the moment. On my last video I was talking about how we can see even the familiar in new ways. And today it seems I'm being presented with the new, seeing the new in unfamiliar ways. I come out from the undergrowth, I can see all sorts. Hopefully you can see this too on the camera. Where I live in Wales, we have strange terrain. I say strange to me at least. So this vast expanse of sand dunes, and then we have the shoreline, which is I don't know if I would consider it to be a shoreline, but it's the Bristol Channel. It's the outlet from the Bristol Channel where it meets the ocean. So the coast is very steep, cliffs, rock. And then we have the valleys and the mountains just inland slightly as you go along. It's a really interesting mix. You get these waves and bands of cloud that come off the ocean, and then they get pulled in the valleys where the rivers run, which is round about the place where the town I live in happens to be. So it's quite damp a lot of the time. And something about seeing the familiar from a different angle gives you an added perspective to work with. Walking down paths like this particular path I haven't been on before, also encourages me to be a bit more present than I might be on other paths. And I was just thinking to myself as I was walking through the woods, it just occurred to me how much of what's on the sides of the paths passes us by. How little attention is paid to it until something interesting emerges from the undergrowth. When you start to look at the undergrowth a bit more closely, you can see these tiny plants growing. At certain times of the year there's fruits and lots of fungus. I can smell fungus here. I'm sure it's down there somewhere. I'm not quite feeling brave enough today to go down there. And also these unfamiliar paths. If you lose presence, you end up walking into brambles, spider webs. And these are good analogies, I find, for becoming complacent in life. Have you ever found yourself in a position where everything just seems to be ticking along, and then all of a sudden a crisis comes along and throws you off balance? And sometimes upon reflection, I find a sense of gratitude for those things, because sometimes we need a crisis to wake us up. And many of us are just moving through life on repeat, on autopilot. And so we seek our feeling of aliveness in distractions, albeit familiar ones. Alcohol, internet, drugs, that kind of stuff. And something unfamiliar comes along and we lament it. We go, oh, I wish that hadn't happened. Treat it as an inconvenience. Sometimes, once we've fought our way through something, it brings us out some kind of greater understanding. If we allow it to, of course. And we don't have to wait for a crisis for that to happen. We can choose to form new perspectives before they're forced upon us. Oh, fancy that. And sometimes we stumble across things like this. If you are reading this, you have made it to the top of the hill and are now looking at the best view of Porthcawl. That's where I am. My family and I walk our dog here all the time, come rain or shine. We would like you to try and express in words what this view means to you. In a world of social media and technology, we would like to try this old-fashioned method and share with as many lucky people as yourself. And I'm sure you can read the rest. Well, today, being the 24th of June, for those of you who may be reading this or watching this who live in the local area, come and find it. I've made a spelling mistake. Hopefully someone after me can read that. And no, I'm not going to edit this out. I may come back with a new lunchbox at some point. For those of you that have ever held a camera before whilst trying to do something with one hand that requires two, you'll know it's a bit challenging. So here we are. Embracing the value of new perspectives. Every once in a while, consider taking a different route. Up or down, or along, consider slowing down or speeding up, taking a friend along, leaving a box for people to make notes. After the long climb and battle through the undergrowth. Now, how fortunate are we as humans? We can constantly embrace new perspectives. Nothing in life is fixed. Everything is subject to change if we allow it to be. Isn't that such a more hopeful way to live? And to be given a label. And to live within the confines of that label. And even if people do give you labels, you don't have to accept them. I can't remember who said it. I think it was attributed to Neville Goddard, 20th century writer. He said, man is limited only by poverty of attention and weakness of imagination. And I can remember in my early 20s, I started to pick up books for myself and read for myself new things, broaden my own perspectives. My imagination didn't work very well. And I couldn't envisage things working out the way that I wanted them to. But what's funny is I could visualize perfectly well bad things happening, as I'm sure many of you can, because I'd exercised that muscle so many times it was second nature to me. It just happened on autopilot. And I started to visualize over time the possibility of things going the way that I wanted them to, and lo and behold, life changed quite significantly. And you don't have to think about anything particularly deep and significant, long-winded. It can be anything. A problem at work, a new recipe to try, or a meal to eat with your partner, or alone. A new way of approaching challenges or opportunities you may not have considered before. It doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes when we jump into trying to make changes in our lives, we look for the biggest, most dramatic, most meaningful, difficult, enormous challenge that's facing us in the moment. We try and attack that one head on. It's like going to the gym and putting the heaviest weights on the bar and being disappointed that you can't lift them, even though it's your first time in the gym. It's just, sometimes common sense dictates we start small. I'm no exception to this. I've been thinking to myself over the last few months, whilst I've been looking for work and taking care of my dad, coming home and picking up the search for work again. How can I grow this channel? How can I earn money from it? How can I create content in such a way that sustains me financially and allows me to do the things I love? And the more I reflect on that, Well, it becomes apparent to me that maybe that's not the point. Because it's such a big, inconceivable, unknown set of unknowns that hasn't taken root in my mind fully. Maybe the only thing I can do is grab my camera, go for a walk, and if something occurs to me to share, then I will. And if I don't, then I get to enjoy the walk anyway. And the irony is that aspiring to live a life of greater presence doesn't remove you from the need to have some sense of direction. It just doesn't need to be absolute. I find so many people who are lost, feeling lost, struggling, because they haven't found their purpose. They haven't figured out what they want to be when they grow up. And presence says, it doesn't matter. Sometimes those things become apparent to us very early on. Oh, struggling now. Sometimes, like me, you have to go through multiple iterations before you find yourself anywhere close. I might wake up tomorrow, think to myself, I don't want to do this anymore. I think it's unlikely. I embrace the possibility. I don't fear it. In the same way that, no, for none of us, there is no guarantee of tomorrow. Yet we're living with the promise of a better tomorrow. Perhaps that's why we struggle so much. This tomorrow is just today, pushed out. And if we had the courage, we would see everything is here, and it's as here now as it ever will be, in its form and its potential. The only thing that's not here is us. We're off in the future, or lost in the past somewhere. We really don't need to be. As always, thanks for coming along. I appreciate your company, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.